Pode falar, você quer ler o nome dela, né? Tá sim. Pode começar, tá?
So now it's Beatriz' turn to present her final paper. I wish you good luck.
Hello everyone, good evening. My name is Beatriz and this is my final paper. The role of phonics in teaching reading to young learners in English as an additional language classroom. I'd like to begin by thanking my advisor, Professor Dr. Francine Personal William, as well as my examination board for accepting my invite. I would also like to thank my family that has stood by me through the ups and downs. I would not be here without your support. Tonight, I will talk a little bit about the statement of the problem, the objectives, the research questions, the theoretical framework, the methodology, the analysis, the conclusions, and the references. Let's begin with my statement of the problem. During my lessons in an English language school, I realized that some of my 8 to 9-year-old students were having difficulties in reading activities. While reading out loud, they would pronounce the words according to the sounds they make in their native language, Portuguese, and not in English, causing them to mispronounce these words. After investigating a little further, I realized the problem lay in the letter-sound relation. In other words, they didn't know the right sound each letter or letter groups would make in English. Another moment in which I experienced a similar situation was during my obligatory internship at a public school last year. The students were doing an activity on the English Paraná platform, and one student in particular was becoming quite frustrated. The objectives of this activity was to listen and transcribe the vocabulary words they were learning. But because the student was associating the sounds to the letters as we would in Portuguese, he was unable to successfully spell out the word uncle. After realizing the problem lay in the letter-sound relation, I began to wonder how we learn this in our native language, and if we could use the same method or something similar to teach it in an EAL context. This led me to phonics, which by definition is the teaching of reading by correlating sounds to letters in an alphabetic writing system. With that, my general objective is to carry out a bibliographic survey on phonics to understand results achieved by researchers whose focus was on the development of phonetic reading and writing activities in English as an additional language lesson for children between the ages 5 to 10. My specific objectives are identify in the literature the presence of phonics in teaching reading in an EAL classroom, identify activities that could be used and developed, including phonics, to improve reading in an EAL classroom, and identify target audience, age group, context, public, private, or language school, in which phonics in teaching reading in EAL classroom were included. With that, my research questions are, number 1, which work analyzes the usage of phonics in teaching reading in the EAL young learners classroom? Number 2, which approaches and/or activities could be used and developed, including phonics, to improve reading? And number 3, in which context is it viable to include phonics in teaching reading in EAL? Now for my theoretical framework. One of the most important terms present throughout my research paper is reading, which is a conjunction of the visual letters, which we call the graphemes, the sounds, which we call the phonemes, and its meaning. And although reading is a skill in itself, It's composed of smaller skills, such as understanding the relation between the letter and the sound, which is where phonics would be useful. Besides that, to be good readers, students need to have a developed phonological awareness, which is an umbrella term which represents the understanding of sounds in general. Inside phonological awareness, we have phoneme or phonemic awareness, which is the understanding that words are composed of sounds, and that if you change a sound, you will be changing the whole word and its meaning. In most EEL classrooms, reading is taught through a top-down approach, which focuses first on meaning over the letter sounds. But when learning to read in our native language, we learn through a bottom-up approach, which focuses first on the sounds of the individual letters, then how to join them to form words, and then its meaning. And in these EEL classrooms, through this top-down approach, students are usually expected to simply pick up this phonological aspect, which usually doesn't work. Now, to understand the presence or lack of phonics, we investigated two official documents related to education. The first of them being the Brazilian document DISCENTE. And first of all, the document only contemplates the teaching of reading, the teaching of EEL to 6th grade students and upwards, excluding the age group that was the focus of this final paper, which were 5 to 10-year-olds. Besides that, the document as a whole lacks the presence of phonics, which shows the need of more research. The second document we observed is the National Curriculum in English, which shed light to the way that native speakers of English view phonics. And the first thing that was made clear is that to them, phonics is essential, as in the English writing system, the graphemes don't always correspond to the same phoneme, meaning a single letter may have different sounds depending on the word or phrase. And if it can be proven to be useful for them, it may prove to be useful for our students as well. With that, my methodology is, as I mentioned before, the research type is a bibliographic study, with the research nature being basic or fundamental, and the objectives are exploratory and descriptive, which occur through an inductive qualitative approach. The data gathering process occurred through primary data collection, which led to 5 studies, which are the following: Alden 2021, Leão and Green 2021, Gaza 2021, Ross and Joseph 2021, and Wall 2022. The data analysis occurred through Banca 2016 content analysis. Okay, now my analysis. Out of the 5 texts read, only Leão and Green answer our first research question: which works analyze the usage of phonics in teaching reading in EEL young learners classroom? Through an integrated literature review, these authors investigated the benefits of a multisensory phonics program in which phonics was applied through the use of the 5 senses. In other words, through a visual, auditory, tactical, and kinesthetic approach. Out of the authors present in this work, we gathered 5 that were connected to the teaching of 5 to 10-year-olds, which are the following: Josh et al. 2002, Steckel et al. 2008, Campbell et al. 2008, Carey 2016, and Cheslinger and Gray 2017. The results found by these authors is that this phonics instruction improved phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, decoding and encoding skills, comprehension skills, developing alphabetic principle skills, as well as reading accuracy and fluency. All of this shows that there are clear benefits to the use of phonics. Now, to answer our second research question, which approaches and/or activities could be used and developed, including phonics, to improve reading, we use 3 authors: Alden 2021, Gaza 2021, and Ross and Joseph 2021. The first author, Alden 2021, uses pseudo words, which are words that follow the English writing system but have no meaning, to evaluate decoding abilities as well as phonological awareness. And through meta-analysis, this author found that there is some things that we need to take into consideration for this work. The first of them being that students need to have an oral L2 proficiency base. meaning we first need to be able to say the words before they learn to read them. The second was the way we apply it. The author found that phonological awareness instruction and phonics instruction are both useful, but are more effective when done separately. The third was time, meaning that more time reserved for this approach, better the results. Next, we had the age group. The author found that it would work best on elementary age students over primary age students. And the last thing that we must take into consideration is the transferable knowledge between L1 and L2. Because we need to understand, it would help us better understand what changes between these two languages and what stays the same. The second author, Gaza 2021, through songs, storybooks, games, and totophysical response, which is the use of movement as well as oral commands, investigated, developed a few subsets of phonological awareness. The first of them being phoneme or phonemic awareness, which, as mentioned before, is the understanding that words are composed of sounds. But another thing that falls under phoneme and phonemic awareness is the ability to manipulate these phonemes. It's divided into the following: phoneme isolation, phoneme identification, phoneme categorization, phoneme blending, phoneme segmentation, phoneme deletion, phoneme addition, and phoneme substitution. The author presented various activities that could be used to practice each of them. One example of this is one in which the teacher would bring various objects and put them on the floor, and the students are asked to identify the common phoneme between all of them. The second subset is rhyme, which is the understanding that some words end in the same sound, and this is useful to the students understand about word families. A fun game to practice this is called Get Off the Bus. Students receive various words and are asked to pair the ones that rhyme, putting them in the bus seats, leaving the ones that don't rhyme to get off the bus. When working with syllables, students need to have an understanding of how to blend them, and a way to do this simply is by giving them a few words and asking them to join them. Syllables are divided into onsets and rhymes, which are very important because they will help students understand about spelling rules and phonemic rules later on. A rhyme house is a fun game to practice this. Students receive a rhyme house with a target word on top. Then they need to separate the onset and the rhyme and search the house for new onsets and new rhymes to form new words. The third work, Ross and Joseph, 2021, used the word box method as well as its app version, Build a Word Easy Spelling with Phonics. Both of them have the same premise. Students receive a box with letters, and the teacher will say a target word. Students will then need to identify the correct letters and put them in the correct order inside of the word box. The app version is very interesting because it helps students with visual support, variety, immediate corrective feedback, modeling, active student responding, and repeated practice. Now, to answer our third research question, in which context is it viable to include phonics in teaching reading in English as an additional language? We have the authors, Leão and Green, 2021, Gaza, 2021, and Wall, 2022. Now, Leão and Green believe that a multisensory phonics program is so effective that it would be beneficial for various age groups and classroom contexts. But it would have to be used through a form-focused instruction through a multisensory phonics program alongside communication and content-based approaches. This way, students will be able to understand the language form as well as have natural input to develop communication skills. The second author, Gaza, believed that the age group of young learners is quite good to teach this approach because they will be in the beginning stages of learning to read, so it will be more effective for them. But for this author, phonics instruction needs to be systemic, explicit, and consistent. Another thing this author sees as essential is teacher training. Teachers need to have an understanding of what phonics are and how to apply them, as well as understanding how to teach children before teaching our students. The last author, Ward, investigated how to deal with phonics in the white school curriculum. And this author found that a bottom-up approach is useful because this way students will have more ease when learning vocabulary words later on. But he also debated on how to apply this through a synthetic approach in which words are first taught through the individual sounds of the letters, or through a more analytic approach in which students are given groups of words and are asked to identify the patterns within them. He also debated on how it should be organized through a systemic approach in which students are taught through a pre-planned sequence, or through a more sporadic approach in which its focus is more on the student's needs. The conclusion found by this author is that the four approaches are very valid and useful depending on the classroom context. But the best way to apply all of this first is through a diagnostic assessment to understand what the children already know, taking into consideration the transferable knowledge between L1 and L2 and the exposure of L2 that these children have. To wrap everything up, my conclusions. So to answer the first question, we had Lango and Green, who wrote various authors that spoke of the benefits of a multisensory phonics book, but they emphasized the need of more research in this area. To answer our second research question, we had the authors Aldo 2021, Gaza 2021, and Ross and Joseph 2021. They brought various activities, they presented various activities, including phonics, phonological awareness, and phoneme awareness, all of which were activities that were age appropriate and developmental stages appropriate for these children. To answer our third research question, we had the authors Lango and Green, Gaza, and Wall 2022. And these authors, they analyzed and they were able to reach the conclusion that phonics instruction is useful for various contexts and age groups, especially the ones in which the children are in the beginning stages of learning to read. For these approaches, for this phonics instruction, both systemic and analytic approaches can be used. Synthetic and sporadic approaches can also be used, depending on the context of the classroom. Now, the last thing that these authors believe to be quite important is that teachers need to have an understanding of what phonics are and how to apply them in order to teach the children. As well as that, it's of extreme importance that they have an understanding of the individual characteristics of teaching children and how they learn, especially taking into consideration the differences between the developmental stages of the children. And they need this attention from us, and they deserve it. These are my references. Thank you for your time.
Ó, você pode ter uma cadeira macia, ali. Então pode embora já?
Also,
Menos pronto. É um livro, né?
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Beatriz, first of all, I'd like to thank you and I have some suggestions for your article. Right? I have comment on the PDF file with all the comments. Then you can take a look, right? But we don't have time to look at everything I put there. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the main points, right? Would you prefer answering the questions while I'm saying, or do you want to answer them all at the end? It's up to you. Some.
Okay. In order.
Okay. Okay. So, well, your article is really well organized. So we could see, I could see while I was reading it that you worked really hard, not only on the theoretical approach you read, but also on the structure of the paper and also on the academic writing. Okay, so it's clear that you worked a lot on that and you improved a lot as well. We have the final result here that is really good. Okay, so on the introduction, you contextualized really well, so I could see what were your motivations, right? So I could see it was something that emerged from your practice. And then here you had the opportunity of systematizing it and reading, searching, reading, and producing knowledge related to this subject you enjoy so much, that's phonics, right? Well, then on the theoretical framework, so the introduction, really good, right? On the theoretical framework, I could see that you worked really hard here as well because you presented how you selected the data, and so what were the criteria you used to exclude or to include authors, right? And this shows us that you and your advisor, you were really careful to bring here reliable authors and recent texts, right? What is really good. Then, as you said, you worked with two official documents, so your intention was comparing one from Brazil and another one from England, right? And here, I have a suggestion for you, right? Because the one you read, the English one, it is meant to be used in a context in which teachers are dealing with the birth language, right? And in the Brazilian context, we have a document that is BNCC that is guiding the teaching of the same language, that is English, but in a different context. That's the context of English as an additional language as you presented, right? Here I would suggest you taking a look at a document I think you already know. I think probably you read something during the course. That are the Diretrizes Curriculares Nacionais para a Língua Inglesa nos anos iniciais do ensino fundamental. That was organized by the British Council and it was published in 2022, right? So for further, if you intend broadening this research, I suggest you taking a look at this document because there we have guidelines for this specific age you work with. That are the kids 8 to 9 years old, right? And that's the public, the English document deals with. While on the MCC, the guidelines are for kids from the 6th grade onwards, right? I'm not saying that you should exclude the reading of the MCC, but it's something to include. And also, I think you should take a look at the MCC on the part, not on the when they are dealing with English, but on the part they are dealing with the Portuguese language, right? To see what are the suggestions, what are the guidelines for the teaching of Portuguese, in this case, developing the alphabetization here, right? And see what are the suggestions and if they deal with the phonics in Portuguese, right? Because they do, okay? They do. Nowadays, kids learn how to read and write through the método fônico, right? That was not what happened when I was a kid learning how to read and write during the 90s, okay? But then things changed, and now they work with a método fônico that's pretty similar to what phonics deals with, right? So developing phonemic awareness, developing phonological awareness, because if kids do not develop that on their mother tongue, they don't read and write, okay? So we can benefit from this part of the NCC, okay? And check what the directrices bring, but I know the document and they mention something related to phonological awareness, working with the sounds, teaching kids how to identify the sounds a certain letter produces, right? Well, let me see what else here. Okay, let me see. So that's something I think you should work on, right? Because, as I said, this subject is important, right? And as you said on the conclusion, your conclusions, it's something we as teachers of English, we need to be aware of, we need to develop, right? And we can benefit from what the teachers that work with the mother tongue do, right? Because they do work on phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, and so, right? So let me ask you some questions, Beatriz, because so the methodology good as well. You organized in a clear way, so my reading was fluent. I could see you brought the objectives throughout your paper. You brought the questions, so I didn't need to go back and forth, right? The discussion as well, as I said, I would suggest here on the data analysis and discussion, on the part to talk about the teaching, how to teach kids, how kids learn, and so perhaps you should include something written by Professor Juliana Tonelli that works a lot on teaching English for young learners. Bring something related to the child development. Here you could bring Blonsky, authors that you already know and that for sure will contribute to your paper, right? Well, I have some questions. The first one is, I would like to know if you intend broadening your research, if you intend applying for a master's degree position,
Yes, I do. I don't think it will be next year, but in the near future, I intend to apply it. I think the first step would be to apply them in my own lessons. Thankfully, I teach in schools that they give me the opening to change things and put new activities for the students. So I think the first thing that I would do in the next few years is apply them in my own lessons, and then through a master's, maybe do something more, widen the text, and I don't know, use more information, but definitely apply it.
Okay, so I think you have to follow, working on this subject because it's really useful. We know that when we are aware of this stuff, we can improve a lot our practice. And the second question is, how do you think it would be possible to work interdisciplinarily with the teacher of Portuguese? For example, once kids learn phonics in Portuguese while they are learning how to read and write. So, as you are working with this group, so that's the group, they are from 5, 4 to 7 years old, 8 years old, they are learning how to read and write in Portuguese. So, how do you think you could work? How do you think you could benefit from this knowledge they are building in order to learn how to read and write Portuguese?
I think by using this transferable knowledge between the two languages, thankfully Portuguese and English, they have some sounds that are the same. So I think that would be the first step, to understand the different sounds that they already know, and try to work with that first, and then show the differences that they have in English. I think interdisciplinarily, I think we could learn a lot, as you mentioned, with teachers that are teaching the children in our native language, of ways that they already see that works with them. I think so. That would be the way I would approach it. So always having conversation with them, understanding differences, what can be the same between both languages.
Okay, Beatriz, so only these 2 questions, right? And once more, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Beatriz. Once again. So it was very nice to read your paper. Very British style, by the way. It's nice to see that it came directly from your interest group to teach. And there's a connection with our discipline for young learners. I could see many points there that we have worked it in our discipline. So I highlight how interesting it was to me the area you decided to research. It's very detailed, and you were talking in terms of something that I never imagined researching. Some topics like pseudo words, phonemic organs. I think it's different to read it, and I have to congratulate you specifically for the session 3.2. Because it's very detailed, so I had to read and come back and so on. So this session of data gathering, I think it explained it very well how you organize it, everything you produce it. And as Simone has commented, I missed some Brazilian authors are the ones we have read in the discipline, for example. But you brought something really useful that I would consider for the disciplines after reading your paper, which is really nice. And I got curious because in your introduction, you have mentioned it came from your practice, from a problem you have realized. And you talked about asking parents to record. It was a very nice initiative. And I would like my first question to you is to know if you had a feedback with the parents, how you gave back the results of this recording.
Well, first of all, not all of the parents were able to give me this feedback, but the ones that did, I asked them to send me a video of the children saying it, and then I told them that, well, I identified these problems, and my intention is to develop a little bit better in the classrooms. So after the parents sent me the video, I analyzed them all, and I wrote down the ones that were recurring between them, and I found a list of them that I could change and apply in my lessons, giving more emphasis on these ones that they had difficulties. But the feedback to the parents later on, it was just that, well, these are the difficulties that I found with the children. Thank you for your participation, and that's kind of it.
That's so great to know. Yeah, unfortunately, maybe later on you could work with something more integrated, maybe a master's, that you could develop this again. In terms of reviewing things in your paper, I just would comment about the Brazilian voice, as I have already commented. And in terms of the structure, it was brilliant, very well organized, the sessions, the summary, and everything, the splitting. But I would have a look, I always pay attention to the terms you use a lot. So phonics, it's a very common word in all over your paper. So I would highlight it because sometimes it's in capitals, sometimes lowercase, or I don't know, italic. I don't think you use that, but I think you could standardize this use. I used to make a review of all the papers, so I can send you the PDF highlight some comments. And this I would pay a special attention because it's phonics, and that's everything in your paper. And a detail about the phonemic awareness and phonological too. So sometimes it's PH for both. Yeah. So I don't know if you have a solution for that, but I highlighted there because the first time on page 13, and then as it's new for me, I go, oh my God, this is the same. So I had to read again and come back. So maybe if you change the acronym, there's an author, I think, that mentions SPA, so you cannot change what he or she said. But then after that, I think you could make a solution for this kind of problem. And the last thing to change that I would like to comment, sometimes with all the brilliant writing, there are two parts in your paper that you have forgotten the suggestions from maybe Francine for you, like the number of letters in the abstract, it's already there. In your references, there's I styled how to form the references there. So I think you just forgot to erase. So I have highlighted there. And a final question for you, because I think you were deserving the word final at this moment. On page 28, in your conclusion, you mentioned exactly like this. When teaching young learners, it's also very important to consider the specific characteristics of the age group. Something that we comment like all over the classes of Leakin that we have. So how would you apply the use of phonics nowadays after the research and everything in the groups you teach, right?
Okay, so with my 5-year-old students, I already apply it in a specific way. When teaching the sounds of the letters, I usually teach them through stories. And these stories explain to the children why the letters have that specific sound. I found that this way, this knowledge grips better into their minds. So for example, the H, which is usually silent in Portuguese, it has the H sound in English. So the simple story that I told the children is that it was being naughty, it did something bad, and mommy and dad told it off, and it ran away from home. And then it got so tired that that's why it does that sound. And every time I I teach the stories, I always take realia with me so that they have something physical to use in the classroom. So when I was teaching the H, I took Play-Doh and I formed the letter, and each of them were able to form it, and they used it to make the H run and repeat the sound. But I think after all of the things that I've learned with my research, I would apply it in a more analyzed and more systemic way with some of the older students as well. Because the 5-year-olds, they are beginning to understand the letter sounds. But the older students that I teach, the 2nd and 3rd grade, they already learn to read and understand things better. So I think with them, I would first analyze what they already know in the beginning of the year, finding as well the transferable knowledge between L1 and L2, the ones that they have more difficulty in because it's different in English and Portuguese, and look into their materials that they use. Usually it's the bilingual systems that they have, and apply more activities to focus these individual sounds while they're learning the vocabulary words in each unit. So I think that's the way that I would approach this problem. But yeah, always keeping to these fun activities, always hand-on things, just everything that makes it more fun for them.
So I guess that was what I wanted to talk to you. Now I would say congratulations for all the paper, everything you have brought to here was very interesting. And I hope to read you again in some other moments, because this is really nice. And I hope you keep teaching children with the passion you show every day, not only in the discipline, but also in this paper. Okay, so.
Bom, então agora é aquela hora que vocês saem da sala para o horário vocês voltarem também. E a gente encerra aqui a transmissão do YouTube de hoje.